Let me just make sure I'm recording. Okay, let's do it again. All right. Good morning, everybody. This is Live with Main Street, and you've got Anna and Liz. No, Jim today.
Good morning.
No, we were kind of not as excited this morning without Jim, but he's on the way to U.S. From all of his travels he's done in Italy and all other places that I don't even know. So anyway, he'll be back next month. All is well, but Liz and I are chatting today about how do you fund education. It doesn't have to be college education, but that's what we kind of think about, because I think a lot of you know that there's a huge problem with student debt in this country, and that's kind of the other side of the equation. So we want to kind of give you suggestions and recommendations. How do you get there and not have student loan debts? And so there's a couple of things that we want to discuss. We have a few questions that we've gotten from our clients, and so that's sort of the theme for today's Live with Main Street. So hi, Liz. Are you ready?
Yes. Good morning. Happy to be here. Round 2 for me. So.
Yay, good. So pretty soon you'll be maybe next month Anna will be here. I don't know.
Yeah.
So kind of let's sort of have a discussion. So I think when we talk about, or the topic of education comes up, people tend to think that it all has to be saved in college savings plans such as 529s. Those are sort of the most typical. And do we have any specific recommendations there? And do we like any particular plans? I wanted us to just elaborate a little bit more on this topic. And then we'll go into some other sides of the question that don't necessarily have to do with 529 plans.
Right. Absolutely. When I think about that, because clients ask us all the time, what's the best plan? How do I know the one that's ideal for me? And I start to think about the factors involved. So one of the biggest things you want to look at is fees. The number that you're looking for, it can always be found in that plan description. It's that lovely 20 to 40 page document found on the website of whatever 529 plan you're looking at. And that will give you a total asset-based fee. And that is always available, whether you're looking toward Maryland or Utah or Nevada or any kind of plan that you're looking at. And that number is going to start to tell you how much are those fees going to eat out from your investment performance. So a lot of people kind of go into it and they say, I want another performance, but really what are the fees? And as we know, the plans that are actively managed, they're going to have higher fees on those underlying investments. So that's just one factor. There's often an annual account maintenance fee and a variety of other ones. So one, I would say really look out for those fees. 2, I would say, yes, there is the performance function. And most times you can find, typically right around that very last page, it will show each individual portfolio that you can obtain within that plan against its benchmark. So how is it performing? The 1 year column's great, the 5 years great, but we really want you to look at the long term. We want to say, how is this portfolio performing over the long term? What kind of returns am I getting? And we're going to think of that in conjunction with those fees. And I would say in addition, there's a lot of plan options. So we've seen some 529 plans have all static portfolios. So what that means is they kind of put you in one allocation, for example, 80-20, and then it's your job to keep track of that and every few years to go in and to make it more conservative over time. Whereas others have age-based plans, and you can kind of think of that as a target date fund. So for the clients that like to set it and forget it, and this is not their full-time job, and this is not what they love to do, it's really ideal to be able to put that age-based plan in there, and as your child ages, it simply moves it to a more conservative portfolio over time. And the last one I would say is the tax benefit. People are often asking, if there's a tax benefit in my plan, does it make sense to pursue that above all else? And I would answer no. I really want you to think of all these factors combined. And in most cases, you're talking a few $100s a year, the tax benefit of going with your state plan versus the tax benefit of that money growing tax-free over time. And if it's taken out for qualified education expenses, coming out tax-free, those earnings. So that's something that I really want my clients, particularly with younger children, to think about. It's great that you save a few $100s on a state tax deduction, but if there's another plan out there and it's got that low cost and the high performance, then that's your way. So of course you're wondering, I asked you a direct question. Are you going to tell me which plans you recommend?
I know, it's about soon.
I know, and I will. So I have a 1.5-year-old. I went through this
Yeah.
research, just recently, and my top two plans. I love Utah. They are low cost. They offer DFA funds, which I'm a big fan of. And they have custom age-based plans. So if you do like dabbling in investments and you want to understand it, you can do the set it and forget it, but it's also customized to what you picked. And my second one is New York. I'm really happy with the New York plan. It's got Vanguard index funds. It's also low cost, and it's very simple for our clients. So your cheat sheet answer.
Yeah, I love it. And then also, actually, I was at a conference last week. I think is Utah plan now called My 529?
Yeah, so they renamed it.
That's right. That's right. They have rebranded. So yes,
Yeah.
I actually got to chat with somebody at the conference who was representing My 529, which is the Utah plan.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the New York, you mentioned New York plan. Well, for our clients who are in New York, there is, right. So actually, I think you can have both worlds, right? You can have low fees, great investment choices, and you can have the tax deduction. So sometimes you don't have to pick from one or the other. Unfortunately for everybody in California, and I'm with you, we have to pick.
Yes.
Well, actually, no, I'm sorry, I take it back. There's no picking. There's no state deduction for contributions. So you can pick the plan that California offers, or you can go elsewhere. That's the picking part. So
absolutely.
Well, so many of you may know that when I started in financial planning, one of my kind of I call it volunteer jobs. It was a real job. I used to work for Maryland 529 plan. It was really a part-time job, but it was fun because I would go out and talk to parents, like parent-teachers nights, elementary and middle schools, actually a lot more middle schools. And I always wanted to go to elementary schools and like talk to those parents, because by the time they're in elementary school, it's kind of like a little too late. But anyway, I've gotten to learn a lot about the Maryland 529 plan, just the 529 plan in general, because it was really useful. But what I saw was, and what we still hear as advisors from all kinds of clients, whether they're just starting out, they had their first baby, or like I think this year I have like number of clients who have their kids going to first year in college. So this is like real stuff. I've got to pay for it. So the big question comes up, how do we figure out how much to save, right? That's like the question number one. And so I obviously, and Liz, you can sort of comment on this too, but as part of the overall plan that we do for our clients, we kind of dive into the details. And the very first question or answer back to that question is, well, what kind of college do you want to pay for? And right, so we always sort of give the two alternatives. Should we save for the most expensive college that exists today, right? Private school or those Ivy League schools, or do we send them to just a state school, and that, kind of costs half of what it costs for private or Ivy League schools? And I'll give you some numbers. This is for what we're seeing today, but probably 65 to 70,000 on the higher end, and about half of that would be probably on average for state schools and so forth. So those are the numbers. Now we want to talk about like how much do we need to save. So think about that. If you have one child, 4 years at least, times 30, let's say 35,000 or 30,000.
I know. And the craziest part, Anna, is I remember when I was going through my CFP training, to get our coveted designation, and the numbers that they gave us, the benchmarks were 1,000, 3,000, and 6,000 of how much money you should be saving per year. 1,000 if you see your child going to an in-state school, 3,000 a year per child, starting like when they're an infant for 18 years. 3,000 if they're going to go to an out-of-state school, and then that 6,000 if you see them going to a private school. And I can tell you, those numbers do not work today. So as we often talk about, we're looking at about a 6% inflation rate on education right now.
Yes.
And that makes it really challenging for families to plan, especially when you start thinking about having your money invested in the market and what kind of allocation are you in to even, combat that 6% inflation. So I completely agree with you. I think it's really doing that soul searching of where do you see your child? What do you see them attending? I would also point out to a lot of clients, what percentage of funding do you want to do? I think they often ask that question of, okay, I want to save for my child's college, but does that mean you're paying 100%? Does that mean you want your child to have some skin in the game, you know, and maybe they take out some of their student loans? Does that mean you're open to grants and scholarships and student aid and work study and all of those other features? So I kind of see their eyes light up a lot when they start talking to me about college, and they take that pressure off of themselves of feeling that they need to fully fund it, you know, 100%. I think that's a big one. And the other thing I've noticed too, I had a portion of student loans myself, and I think it really gave me that sense of responsibility and understanding. And very aware of the epidemic. So many of our clients really are under a heavy, heavy burden. But there is a reasonable amount. I think that a student really learns to value their education. And I'll tell you, if I skipped class, I was really hurting myself because I was paying a lot of that for myself. So, you know, I'm going to kind of be a little bit of an advocate for having your child have a little bit of skin in the game. And I've noticed that there are some private loans that parents can actually take out that have a clause for a co-signer that actually dissipates over time. So at the beginning, you and your child are both fully responsible for that loan. And then over time, it actually switches to their full responsibility. So to me, that kind of seems, if you have to go that route and you need to take out loans for your child, that kind of seems like a reasonable way to both share the responsibility.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm sort of with you in the same boat. I had student loans and have a whole lot, but yeah, the attitude was a whole lot of different when I knew I had to go to class. I did a lot of my classes. I worked during the day.
Yeah.
And then I went to school at night. So yeah, it was quite a bit different. But yes, I mean, yes, when you were talking about amounts to save, I think at the very minimal, $500 a month. But again, I think we can throw out some numbers now. What we probably recommend to do first is what you just said. Figure out how much you really want to pay for, right? And sometimes it's hard to do, right, Liz? You with your 1-year-old, or you know, whenever you were doing it when she was 2 months old, you were like, how much do I want to pay? What is she going to be like? Right?
I know, it is. It can be really overwhelming. And I'll tell you, something I found helpful is the College Board. You know, every parent knows that website from sending their kid to college. They've got a great college cost calculator. So you can truly, if you see a particular school in mind, I know in my area it's Penn State, you know, that everyone likes to see their kids go to. So if you've got a school in mind, that College Board website can be really helpful for kind of starting there. And then, as we just talked about, looking at the investment performance, you know, at the end of the day, we'd love you to come in and see a financial advisor and find out how much money you should be saving. But if you've got that data, you know the amount of the school, you know that your child has X amount of years left to save, because that's the real question, right? Are you starting when they're 10? Or are you starting when they're still in diapers? So that's a huge, huge impact. So yeah, you can kind of work it backwards a little bit yourself if you wanted to get a right base amount to say, okay, this is what this particular school is going to cost. And then go to those 529 or whatever savings websites and say, what kind of return can I expect over how many years? And that's a simple, you know, future value calculation at that point. So yeah, it's a challenging one for parents, I'll tell you.
Exactly. So we know, and there's been quite a few articles out there with the new tax law that we just got. So it was 2018 starting and on, about, which I think is an exciting feature, right? For how, so traditionally 529 plans have been solely dedicated to paying for college-related expenses, right? Tuition, room and board, and some of the other qualified expenses, not everything, but some of the travel, like computers and things like that. Now, with the new tax law, as I understand, there's an opportunity, right, to use it, fund it, and then use some of the money. It's not, entire balance for private school, right, before college, which I think we have quite a few clients who have their kids going to private schools. So I think it's an exciting opportunity there as well. So some planning needed for that too, because otherwise, and I look at it, if you're not getting a whole lot of tax deduction, then what's the point of putting money in that 529 plan if you don't have a lot of time, right? 529 plan is like a Roth IRA, right? It's this thing, you get money to grow tax free. So what you need is the time for that to work.
Absolutely.
So, and it's like, do you know, Liz, you know that Bailey's going to go to private school at this point?
Oh, God, don't make me answer that. This is being recorded.
You don't, right? Or you may like say, well, you know, maybe public schools where you guys live is going to be just fine. So there's a lot of planning to do, but around this question, but I thought it's worth mentioning because it's a great feature, and so potentially.
It is. Yeah, and so it was the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017 that started to say, okay, federally, we're going to allow parents to start using money for K through 12th grade to save for their education, take distributions. So the limit that a lot of people want to keep in mind is it's $10,000 per child per year. So I know, especially in the DC area, there are plenty of private schools that cost a lot more than that. So you are held to that limit, but it's worth noting that it could be a really great way to save for your child and to be able to take those distributions. Now, there are limitations. We know for college, we're always talking about qualified education expenses, and that will include your computers and your room and board and all of that stuff. Right now, as it stands, it's tuition only for that K through 12th grade. So that's worth noting. And it's private schools, religious schools, that sort of thing. Yeah. And something else that I noticed, Anna, was not all of the states have necessarily come on board with the state deduction. Yeah. So just this morning I checked because savingforcollege.com has an ongoing list. And thank God, Maryland, Virginia, they're all up to date. But if you're about to take a withdrawal, it's worth definitely jumping onto that website, savingforcollege.com, and they list out the different schools and they clarify which ones have agreed to that state tax deduction. And I know Texas, Delaware, I think Utah, there are quite a few that still didn't have it on there. So right before you take a distribution, either work with a CPA or jump on that website and make sure, because you want all the benefits that include with taking that money out for sure.
Exactly. Yes, we don't want to don't make silly mistakes.
Yeah.
You've heard it. All of a sudden we can use all of that money. So obviously, yes, cost of private school could be as astronomical as cost of college. So, and you need a lot more of that if you're sending your kids for K through 12.
Definitely.
So, well, great. I think, Liz, we're just about out of time. And so for those of you who are watching live, thanks for tuning in. For those of you watching this recorded, let us know if you have any follow-up questions. We'll be back throughout this month. Our focus is education, savings, how to pay for it, basically all kinds of different angles. So stay tuned for more webinars and articles and videos to come from us. And we'll see you next month. We did miss Jim, but this was kind of Anna and Liz hangout. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Yeah, thanks. So great connecting with you guys. Bye-bye.